Pop quiz, everyone. What was one of the most hated things about basically the most successful smartphone of last year? Raking in the most money, having the most sales, and still selling hot for Apple to this day. What was one of the big complaints? Of course, that little notch cutout on the top. Thanks to psoriasis, I got one growing myself. And now, our first leak has been confirmed for the Google Pixel 3, and I think you know where this is going. This report from unnamed sources comes from Bloomberg, so you can dismiss this as you will. If anyone out there wants to say, no, this is completely false, you're welcome to do that. But I just like reporting on this idea because it sounds hilarious to me, and based on how Google has handled things in the past, doesn't seem very impossible. So Bloomberg reported, Google is working on an overhaul of its Android mobile software, mimicking Apple's controversial new notch at the top of the iPhone 10, according to people familiar with the situation. While Android dominates the middle and low end of the global smartphone market, Apple controls most of the high end with users who spend more on apps and other services, meaning that so much of Android takes up cheaper smartphones and mid-range smartphones. However, since Apple is catering towards the upper end, the people who pay more for their smartphones, which means they also pay more for apps and services, which, as I've talked about many times on this channel, services are going to become the main source of revenue in tech companies in the future because we're going to get to a critical mass point with hardware where camera quality, features, displays, all of that starts blending into one. So the people who have all the money from services are going to survive. Embracing that notch may help change that. The design will mean more new Android phones with cutouts at the top of their screens to fit cameras and other sensors. That will likely support new features, helping Android device make similar to Apple technology. Now, of course, this does not mean all Android phones are going forward with it, but I don't know if you know about Google's history, but most of the time, they don't alter the stock Android experience to fit a couple of smartphones' ideas. In other words, I'm trying to say that I don't think the Android team is getting ready to design notches and cutouts at the top because they want to do the Essential company a favor. They're like, oh, that Essential phone, you could have used some help. Let us help you with that. No, Google's hardware team is expanding by the day. They bought out a bunch of people from the HTC hardware team. They've now absorbed Nest, which is no longer a thing, into the hardware team. If they're making alterations to stock Android that are involving a cutout, I think this definitely is showing an R&D phase for the Google Pixel 3 department. That's why when there were a ton of articles posting that the Pixel 3 might adopt an iPhone 10-like notch, some of you out there were claiming this is clickbait. That's not true. I don't know exactly what else it's supposed to mean. There's a couple more Android companies out there that are starting to implement the notch, but they don't need Google's help. They're doing it fine already. In fact, the Essential phone did fine with it anyway. So what I could see happening is that they're starting to develop exclusive stock Android features for their Pixel 3 so that adapting that notch is easier since Google is, of course, designing the hardware and software to work together. That's why people love the Pixel phone so much, right? Optimization. So when I see leaks like this, I'm saying, heck yeah, this definitely means that the Pixel team's looking at the Galaxy S9 that's about to come out. We know that it's going to be combining face unlock technology and iris unlocking technology. They're seeing extreme success in the iPhone 10 market, and despite all of those criticisms, despite everyone saying, you know, that notch looks ugly, oh, I hate that cutout at the top, Samsung making fun of it, despite all of that, we've seen they've had tremendous sales. If you look at the hard numbers, in fact, the iPhone 10 sold better than the iPhone 7s did the year before. It may have seemed like a slow decline in unit sales if we look at Q4 of 2017 versus Q4 of 2016, but Tim Cook actually did bring up that in 2017 it was a week shorter, and if that the sales were the same amount of time as Q4 previously, given that, you know, iPhone 10 had a delayed launch, it wasn't out until November, unlike the iPhone 7, that the iPhone 10 is actually still the best, hottest selling iPhone they've ever made, not to mention the most expensive. The competition sees that and says, okay, customers don't mind the notch. Having a notch on a phone may look weird, but it is not affecting the sales of smartphones, unless you just look at the Essential phone, in which case it's not selling very well at all. But the Pixel team so far seems to cater towards Apple. I've been bringing this up ever since they existed. They made Chromebooks that were made out of aluminum, despite not really doing anything. They were just Chrome OS, but they wanted to mimic that MacBook look. Then when the Pixel 1 came out, I thought it looked exactly like an iPhone, even mimicking the worst parts of its design, like the cell bands on the back, with an aluminum frame. Then mixed it up a little bit with the Pixel 2, but followed Apple in their most controversial decision of removing the headphone jack right after making fun of Apple for removing the headphone jack, saying, our phone still keeps that around. Shame on you, Apple, for removing it, and yet they follow through with it themselves. So the idea of the Pixel team adopting the most controversial feature about the iPhone 10 does not surprise me at all. They know that lots of companies are investigating into this face unlock unlock thing, and because in my opinion, the Pixel team hasn't really innovated anything unique to them for the most part. The AI and software development team has been making all the exclusives. In terms of hardware, Pixel seems to just kind of look at what everyone else is doing and then copy that. Not that copying is bad. I'm not trying to say that companies shouldn't do that. Apple copies other companies all the time. I just think they perfect it. But honestly, I'm pretty sure the Pixel team basically said, yes, 9's gonna have really good face unlock features. The iPhone 10 has face unlock features. We're seeing reports now that the S9 is likely going to attempt to mimic Animoji, which makes sense. They're like, oh, that's stupid. Why would you pay $1,000 for something that makes emojis out of your face? Do people really like it? Oh God, I'm sorry. Okay, we're gonna do that now. So Google, of course, with their bizarrely placed October release date, usually putting them behind the competition, is likely saying, okay, we don't really have any face unlock features. Let's adopt that. And because not very many people care about that notch, we're gonna go ahead and expand our display as much as possible, because that was a common complaint with the Pixel 2, is that you've shrunk the bezels, but they're still very noticeable. Having used the Pixel 2, I think those bezels on the side and the top and bottom just look weird. So they're likely going to encapsulate those stereo speakers and all of these new face unlock sensors that will likely use AI developed by the Google team, and I'm sure it'll work great, but they're going to adopt that notch. And the most entertaining part is we're gonna see all YouTubers who made fun of the iPhone 10's notch suddenly flip-flop on the opinion and say, yeah, the notch was weird, but I don't mind it. You know, I guess this is becoming a normal thing now. Basically, the only people who don't do it are Samsung and LG, and I can't wait to see everyone's opinion be like, ugh, I hate the notch on the iPhone 10, to then flip-flop to, oh, Pixel 3 has a notch. Well, you know, that's just how the tech world works, which is hilarious because that's how I just think all debates with Apple products go. It's like Apple does something controversial and people are upset about it, and then everyone else follows through with it anyway, and everyone else is calm with it. Remember when Apple got criticized for not having a removable battery? There were even times back during the original iPhone that Apple was criticized for not having a slide-out keyboard. There were like Droid phones out there that were like, iPhones don't have a real keyboard. You have to use a touchscreen one. Now it'd be ridiculous to include that on a phone. Look at BlackBerry. So today's video is more of a commentary on how I think it's funny that the Pixel is adopting the notch. Keep in mind that as an Apple sheep, as a guy who has been used to the notch for the past several months, I don't think this is a bad thing. I don't mind the notch at all. What I'm criticizing is people making fun of Apple for the notch. You better be careful what you make fun of Apple for doing, because most likely the competition's gonna start doing it in just a couple years. We don't know how big the notch will be on the Pixel 3 or anything like that. Like I said at the beginning of this video, could not happen at all, but because of how they treated the headphone jack and because of how I thought the original Pixel design looked almost exactly like an iPhone, wouldn't surprise me at all if they decide to go through with the notch. Let me know what you think's gonna happen and what you think of notches now becoming a more normal thing in smartphones in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.